On a single day in October of 2025, one social media post, that's all it took to set off a chain reaction that threatened to plunge the world's two biggest economies into a full-blown trade war. But this time, the fight isn't just about tariffs. It's about who controls the very building blocks of our future. Okay, let's get into it. $2 trillion. That's the amount of value that was just wiped from the U.S. stock market in a single day. October 10th, 2025. It was one of the worst single-day drops in years, and it was all kicked off by one single provocative threat. And there it is. This was the post that sent markets into a complete panic. A massive, totally unprecedented tariff. But here's where it gets really interesting. That threat, it isn't the whole story. Not even close. You see, the real first shot, it had already been fired. Now, we've seen this kind of rhetoric before, right? But in 2025, the game has fundamentally changed. The weapons are different, the battlefield has shifted, and believe me, the stakes are so much higher than ever before. Just look at how quickly this all spiraled out of control. On October 9th, a full day before that tariff post, China expanded its export controls on critical minerals. The next morning, the threat hits, and by the afternoon, the market is in an absolute freefall. But the most important move on this timeline, the real game changer, isn't the one that grabbed all the headlines. It's that first one, the one that, at the time, almost nobody was talking about.
And to put this whole thing in perspective, the proposed tariff wasn't just another increase. It was a completely different class of weapon. We're talking more than 6 times the peak of the last trade war. This wasn't a negotiating tactic. It was a declaration of massive economic pressure.
So why such a massive threat? Because the fight had already moved way beyond simple tariffs. This is now about something far more critical: strategic choke points in the global supply chain. Remember the first trade war? It was fought over things like soybeans and steel. It was a broad, kind of blunt instrument. Well, this new conflict is way more targeted. It's a surgical fight for control over the essential ingredients for, well, everything, from your smartphone to the most advanced defense systems. This chart, this right here, reveals the real weapon in this new trade war. China controls 90% of the world's processing for what are called rare earth elements. This near monopoly isn't just an economic advantage, it's an incredibly powerful strategic lever. Let me show you exactly what that means. So when we say rare earth elements, what are we actually talking about? Well, funny enough, they're not actually that rare in the ground, but they are incredibly difficult to process. They're a group of 17 metals that are absolutely vital for the modern economy. Without them, high-tech manufacturing just grinds to a halt. And this table just brilliantly illustrates the stakes. Neodymium, that's in the motor of an electric vehicle. Europium, it's critical for semiconductors. And the defense applications are even more stark. Ytterbium in F-35 fighter jets, erbium in Tomahawk missiles. You see, by controlling the supply of these materials, China can exert immense pressure on America's most advanced and most sensitive industries. So what do you think is the most critical vulnerability? Let me know below. You know, this isn't just some abstract geopolitical chess game. The decisions made in Washington and Beijing have immediate, real-world consequences for people on the ground. Just like we saw in the last trade war, the first and most predictable retaliation from China targeted American agriculture. It's a painful and politically sensitive move, for sure, but it's also a callback to the old playbook. The numbers, they show the immediate, brutal impact. U.S. soybean exports to China just collapsed. In the first 7 months of 2025 alone, the drop in volume represented a $2.6 billion loss. And get this, for 2 of those months, June and July, exports dropped to literally zero. And that $2.6 billion loss, it translates to this. For an individual soybean farmer in Illinois, this trade war meant a projected loss of $64 for every single acre they planted. That's not just a line on a chart. That is a direct hit to a family's livelihood. And here's what almost nobody is talking about. This isn't temporary. While the U.S. is locked out, its competitors are locking in long-term deals. Brazil is shipping record amounts to China. This is a fundamental redrawing of global trade routes, and the U.S. is getting left behind. But while the pain in the agricultural sector is very real and immediate, it's not the central front in this new conflict. The real long-term challenge is securing the supply chain for America's most advanced industries. This is the key vulnerability.
After hundreds of millions in investment to build up a domestic capacity, the U.S. is projected to produce just 1,000 metric tons of these critical magnets. China produced 138 times that amount, way back in 2018. That's a staggering gap that will take years, if not decades, to close.
So let's zoom out for a second. Beyond the daily headlines and the market swings, what is the real game being played here? Understanding this is critical because it's going to shape the global economy for years to come.
So here's the core insight. The conflict has evolved. It's no longer just about making goods cheaper. It's about securing technological independence and gaining strategic leverage over your rivals by controlling these critical choke points.
Okay, so what should you watch for next? Here are the 3 key signals. First, track the progress of new U.S. processing facilities. Can they actually close that massive production gap? Second, watch how China uses its licensing rules. Will it approve or deny exports of tech that contain these minerals? And third, keep a very close eye on America's allies. These are the indicators that are going to tell us where this whole conflict is headed.
Which brings us to the final critical question. We're not just witnessing a trade spat here. We might be seeing the first stages of a permanent economic split between the U.S. and China. Are these two giants on an irreversible path to decoupling? And what would that even mean for the rest of the world?